So hello again. This is Erica. I see lots of folks dialing into audio and many folks on the computer. So welcome back to our Basics of Starting a Business Week 2. It's always a great sign when everybody who came to Week 1 is back for this week. So thank you so much for making time and staying connected as we move through the class. We have Gigi on chat again this week, so if you have any questions or you have any issues as you're getting connected here, feel free to use the chat function to communicate there. I'm going to go ahead and get started. And a little bit of housekeeping as we start Week 2. This will look similar from last week. We do have recording links available for the 3 sessions, and a few folks asked if they were going to be missing this week or next week if I could send the link. I'm certainly happy to do that if you let me know, and I will send everybody the links to all 3 classes in our follow-up to next week's session so that you have those links to review at your own leisure any of the webinars that we've had. As I said, Gigi will be providing chat support throughout the webinar. Gigi, you want to say hello from your end?
Hi everyone. Glad you could join us again.
Great. And there's also a function that we didn't use a lot last week. If you want to actually speak up with a question at any point, and we'll also have some more interaction on the audio today, feel free to use the hands raised, the raise your hand function there. If I'm out in a document and I'm sharing my computer, I won't see that, but Gigi will, and she'll be able to flag that. If we're in the PowerPoint slides, I'll see that as well. So do feel free to chime in if you want to add as we're going through the presentation. We'll still have our question and answer discussion at the end of each class where I open up the audio for everybody. And the resource documents you got this week, those are also going to be the homework activities. So we'll take a look at those together today and explain those, but you really have what you need in your hands already going forward for this week. I hope folks were able to access the resource I sent last week around your local Women Working Community Microenterprise coordinators. And as always, you're welcome to reach out to Gigi or me directly or to your local coordinator anytime. And I did want to flag to say thank you to the about 50% of folks who took the time to do the post-class survey last week. If you can take a moment at the end of this week and try to get to 100% for us there, this is our first time offering this class online. And so your feedback is really valuable, whether positive, negative, in between, suggestions for future classes. That should pop up for you when we close the webinar. And there's also a link in the follow-up email. So if you don't have time right at the end of our webinar, please take a moment later to go to that link and let us know what you think about the class. So I'm curious as we get started, how was the homework? Did you do the homework? Let's see. And this is giving me a sense because in a moment we are going to go over the homework, and knowing where you are in the process will be helpful for me. So 3 brave folks so far have said that they got started. Come on. I want to hear from everybody here just to get a sense of where we are. An honest person who only had time to take the webinar, that's okay too. This is all stuff that you can move forward at your own pace with once you digest what we've done in the class. So I've got a bit of each here, and I do want to leave time to touch base if there are any questions on the homework. So I'll go forward here. I'm curious from everyone, and I'm going to go ahead and unmute all right now. If we get any horrible feedback, I'll try to play around with unmuting individual folks, but I'm unmuting you all.
The conference has been unmuted.
And so I'm curious, first off, what was your top takeaway from last week? What was the gem that you walked away with? Anyone? And everybody's
my name's Margie, and basically just reinforcement of what needs to be done, and so it's sort of a focus, like a way to stay focused on the process as a whole.
Excellent. So the big picture was what really clicked there. Good, good. Other folks, your top takeaway from last week? No other brave souls. Okay, that's okay. I wanted to leave time for some questions here too. As you looked at the personal budget and the goals for your business or thought about reaching out about the informational interviews, any questions on those pieces? No?
I do have one thing that's sort of halfway formulated in my mind. And I just have to think about it, but I thought I'd throw it out there in case other people are in the same position. The idea that I'm working on, in a certain way, has some proprietary aspects to it. It's a new idea, and I guess I've been in the business world maybe a little bit. I'm slightly jaded to sharing that information, and so I've still been hesitating actually to really expose myself in what I'm trying to do. I'm not really sure what that means in terms of a question, but I'm still kind of looking for ways to put a new idea forward without feeling like if the industry is already moving and I'm new in it, how's that not going to get just kind of taken out from under me? Does that make sense? It's a little bit of a jaded question, but
no, that's a great question. That's a great question, and it's one that I feel like I hear fairly frequently. Certainly in the world of innovation and technology, and there are particular business sectors where you want to protect your intellectual property, and when it's very time sensitive that your competitors might be moving on this before you. So certainly that makes you take a little bit of a different approach to your research and your informational interviews than just marching up to a retail competitor and saying, hey, this is what I'm thinking about. Great
idea, thanks.
Yeah. The other thing I would say, though, is for most of us that are not high-tech, big initial investment, if you're thinking about, a little retail shop, or this happened in my area recently with folks thinking of putting a movie theater in a building that went up for foreclosure. And, on the one hand, the person that was thinking about it came back and said, hey, I talked to some lenders, and it seems like word's all over town about this. And it's pointing back to me. Isn't there confidentiality? I said, well, yeah, there should be. When you present your business plan to a lender, to anyone, do put your name on it. Do put a copyright symbol on it. Do mark it confidential. They should honor that. At the same time, not everybody is going to follow through with putting, for instance, a movie theater in Presque Isle, Maine, right? So you really are the person who needs to run with your idea, and really the bottom line for most sectors is that even if your competitors think your idea is cool, if they're going to steal it, they've got to put the work into doing it. So I hope that answers your question, but it's a good question to raise, definitely.
It definitely does. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Good. And any other folks' reflections from last week? Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute us so we get rid of our collective background audio here. But again, if you have questions or if you have something to add to the discussion as we go along, feel free to use the raise hand function, and we will unmute you individually to speak up there.
The conference has been muted.
Okay. So one more poll here. Again, because this is the first time that we've offered this online, one of the questions we've had at Women Work in Community is how this online training compares to our live basics class, which is 3 hours a week over the course of 3 weeks, or 9 hours total. So I'm curious, for those of you who took a dive into the homework, and if you didn't, that's okay. Go ahead and mark none here outside of the webinar. But if you could answer the poll here to give us a sense of outside of the class, how much did you do working on the business plan, working on the homework pieces, anything to do related to this class? That will help us understand how this compares time-wise in terms of people's participation. So thank you for weighing in on that. I'll give one more moment here because I see a few still coming in. Okay, great. So today's class, we are going to cover the marketing piece of the business plan that we looked at last week. This is going to look very similar from the business plan outline, the marketing, the mission, your target customer, your competition. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about branding and various marketing tools and products you can use. And then we're going to close with pricing this week, which is always the challenging part at the end of the class where we get into a little math in the morning. But all these pieces together will move you forward towards the financials next week. So first off, I should say that marketing is not a function, it's a way of doing business. So this is not just your to-do list, this is really an attitude that you bring to running your business overall. We got some long language here, and marketing is an integrated process, blah, blah, blah. The key piece I see here is your customer relationships. The customer is at the center of your product. You might have the best thing in the world, but if nobody wants to buy it, you don't have a business out of it. And really the heart of this for me is the marketing is meeting your customers' needs and wants at a profit. I was at a great workshop once through, I think it was Maine Organic Farmers and Gardeners, and somebody said, if you're running a farm and you're not making a profit, it's a garden. So keep that farm-garden distinction in your mind as you think about your marketing and as you think about your financials next week. I might add to that for all the rest of our business sectors, if we're simply providing our product and we, I don't want to price it too high, I just want people to have it and enjoy it, well, that's more philanthropy or charity or gifting, and there are places for that in your business certainly, but your core goal is to sell your product or service to your customers and make a profit from it. So keep that in mind. So we're going to look at 3 areas of marketing, that attitude piece, the process of how you do it, and the strategy of how you decide what to do and how you carry out your marketing. Remember the house from last week? So what's in the middle of the house? That's your customer. You've got to get them in there through your marketing. It's on the bedrock of your product and your service. And all the operational pieces are important, but they're only important in so much as they speak to the customer. So the marketing attitude puts people right at the center of your business. If you ignore customers' needs, if you get bad feedback and you don't respond to it, if you don't offer the things that your customers need or want, your business is not going to flourish. And I wanted to invite Gigi to chime in here about that question of addressing customer feedback, because especially in a world where we're all on Facebook, we're all on Twitter, businesses are very visible, we need to know how to respond to things respectfully and productively. So Gigi?
Hi everyone. I think one of the most important pieces, especially with, I'm going to start with Facebook because that's the go-to place for those who have a shoestring budget. You can put up a Facebook page for your business, start getting some likes, start getting some followers. And if you have someone go to your Facebook and say something negative, your first reaction is probably going to be, I'm just going to block that person and keep them off my Facebook page. And what the research I've done, what I've been told is to not ignore that customer, to actually address the situation online on Facebook and say thank you for your feedback. And we will address this and we will take care of it. And then go offline and try to talk to that person privately one-on-one and ask them, what can we do to make this right for you? Have that discussion offline. Don't get into this, tit for tat on your Facebook page, but have the conversation and see if you can make good on it and then try to change some things so that it doesn't happen again. I find that it takes a lot of courage for someone to complain about a product or service. So if you hear a complaint once or twice, whether it's in person or online or over the phone, pay attention to it. That was one of the mistakes I made in business, was that I would just say, gosh, that person is just so high maintenance. But if I heard a complaint more than once or twice, usually that meant I needed to pay attention and perhaps change something, because customers, it takes some courage for them to complain.
Excellent. Thanks, Gigi. And I'd add to that too, I suppose we came at this from talking about the negative here. You can also set the stage for positive customer feedback. If you're a retail store simply asking somebody as they're coming in, how'd you hear about us? Welcome today. What would you like to see in our product line? Those kind of questions will get people engaged in your business, will get chatting with people, and customer service is really at the heart of everything that we're talking about with the marketing attitude. There's a wonderful training online called Welcome Me, which was developed by Maine tourism associations and focuses on this. It's about 3 sessions, I think, and it's very in-depth, and it's great for you or your employees. I'll include that link with my follow-up to today's class, and that's a webinar you can take at any point in time from your desktop. It's not a time-sensitive registration. So great way to approach customer service. So that's our marketing. Oh, go ahead, Gigi.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to say the other thing I might add is one of the most effective tools is to get also testimonials from the folks who are happy and put those on your website, get permission to use their testimonials and brochures, any other communication that you can.
Wonderful. And we'll look at that too when we look at some examples on Facebook and websites later today in the branding piece. Those testimonials or those stories, especially when they include visuals of happy customers engaged with your product, those are huge, particularly in online marketing because it's a real visual world. Good, good. So keep that attitude in mind in everything that we talk about today, and certainly in all of your customer interaction. So the second part of our triangle is the marketing process here. And this is what I call the wheel of decision making here, and it's something we can use with marketing or with anything. Dreaming up what you're going to be doing, right? You've got to brainstorm your ideas, think about everything in the world that you could market with. Now sometimes, or many, many times, we go straight from the idea to the doing. And that's all we do. We just go back and forth from the idea and the doing because really you don't have enough time in the day, right, to evaluate, to strategize, etc. You're just moving along doing your business. So being really intentional about these other steps helps you refine your marketing. If you take all those ideas, and you might have many different ideas here, your strategy is going to help you winnow down to what do I want to do, what do I expect from it in terms of a return on my investment, what are my goals for this particular strategy, and from there you can build your plan of how you're going to roll it out. Once you build your plan, you can do your plan, and then here's the piece that we really often forget. How do I evaluate what I did in the marketing piece? And a horribly sad story from my region, there was a workshop on social media a couple of years ago, and this guy stood up and he said, well, people told me I needed to try Facebook ads. So I spent $2,000 on Facebook ads, and I got no results at all. And I'm thinking in the back of my mind, oh dear, you could have set that ad budget to test and run out at $50. But he just set it up and let it go, and it didn't actually bring any customers down to the paying point in his business. So you got to think about what kind of money on the inside, on the starting point, what makes sense from that end, and what do you need to get out of it on the evaluation end to make that worthwhile. And that really depends on your strategy. If you're doing direct mail and you're trying to reach a whole broad sector of customers, you're probably going to get a very low return rate, but maybe you get a few customers that then become loyal customers over time. If you're doing direct sales, right, you're reaching out to somebody by phone, or you're going out to a contact list, or you're following up on a list of likely customers from a trade show, you might have much higher goals in terms of I'm going to get 50% of these people converted to customers after my pitch. So you have to know what you're aiming for going in to know if you succeeded. So again, I wanted to chime over to Gigi here. Well, and actually, even before we do that, chiming over to Gigi here, hang on, to talk about some creative approaches to marketing, partnering with other businesses, and thinking outside of the box in terms of how you approach your marketing. So Gigi?
Right. So one of the things that has just finished up here in Portland is restaurant, and that's where the restaurants really showcase themselves and invite customers in, have everything from planned menus to just different things. And remember, your competitors can also be your collaborators. They can sometimes bring you a lot of business if you can work together. And I know there was also, back about the time the economy crashed, a lot of the retail stores in Portland were really struggling. So they banded together, some of them, and had these little punch cards made up so that if you went into each retail store, got the card punched, then if you had stopped at every store and at least stepped into that space and gotten them punched, then you were eligible for a prize of some kind. So all those retailers, when you think about it, they had to really get together and coordinate this to get people excited about the Buy Local campaign that goes behind it. And it really, from what I had heard, it really was effective in keeping the sales afloat at a time when retail stores were closing right and left. So there are opportunities to really evaluate, and I was loving what Erica was saying earlier about just asking folks, how did you hear about us? How did you hear about me? Can give you a lot of information. One woman who owns Arts and Science Camp, I asked her one time about her different marketing strategies, and she laughed and said, you know, the truth is I have made one marketing mistake a year. I will try different things, and I will quickly evaluate to see if it is something that's working, and if it's not, I won't renew it. But she laughed about it. I mean, in other words, it was the cost of doing business to try different things, but she was quick to evaluate to see whether or not it worked. In my own experience, I have vacation rental property in North Carolina, and I was trying to increase the number of nights of rentals. And so one thing I tried was getting a membership at the local Chamber of Commerce. With that membership, they put a listing on their website under accommodations. So before long, what I did was, with my website, I did Google Analytics to see where the traffic was coming from. And lo and behold, a lot of those hits, a majority of those hits, were coming through the Chamber of Commerce's website. So that $160 for a membership was well spent, because it was translated into increased rentals at the cabin.
Excellent. And Gigi, thanks for mentioning the Google Analytics in our online marketing helpful links that I sent with the resources, and we'll look at that a little bit later in the webinar today. You have the link right there to go to Google Analytics and understand how that works. There are a couple other evaluation tools too with Facebook and other website related programs that can help you understand how people are interacting with your sites, understand where people are coming from and which marketing is working. So that's a great approach to take. So in the spirit of evaluating results, we would like to know how you heard about this class, because, well, Women Work in Community needs to know where our marketing is as well. So please tell us how you heard about the basics of starting a business. So for instance, as I look at this, I see our own website is doing its job. Our Facebook, social media efforts are doing our job. Referrals from staff and other agencies. And I put newspaper or other media on here because I know that we try to send out press releases. And I suspected with the online workshop that we were less likely to get picked up because it's statewide versus a local training that a local newspaper, for instance, here in Aroostook, can kind of call their own and promote. So this is important information for us, and this is exactly what you can do either in an online or a poll kind of way, or just talking to your customers to be able to see where people are hearing about your business. So moving forward, the marketing strategy part of this is really the heart of what we're talking about with the marketing outline that we'll be going over shortly, with the business plan outline that we talked about last week, and how you put all the pieces together. And before we start, you got to think about, what are you providing? Is there a need for it out there? So before you build a better mousetrap, are there mice? Before you offer your product, are there customers who need it? Is that target market going to respond to what you're doing? So we're going to go through each of these pieces that we saw briefly in the business plan outline last week. We're going to go in more depth this week and then send you off with the tools to fill in the blanks. Your mission, your product and services, your target market, your competition, how you're positioned among your competition or where your niche is, how you produce and distribute your products or your services. And then branding, when we talk about branding or packaging, I put that in quotation marks because it may include the literal packaging and the logos and the labels and things like that for your business, but we're talking packaging more metaphorically here, how you put together the whole image of your business. Then what tools are going to go behind that, what promotion or marketing, either free, a lot of the social media stuff that we talked about may be free marketing, time intensive but less money intensive, or paid marketing and advertising. And then finally we're going to focus on how you establish your prices and put those pieces together. So as we go forward, I'm curious what you are doing already for marketing. And this is targeted particularly to online marketing right now because we're going to go into some detail on that today. Which of these are you using already, or do you think that you'll be using for yourself when you get started with your business? And if some of these, if you don't know what they are yet, you will by the end of this class. So. Okay. So we got website and social media definitely leading here, but folks all across the map as well. So great to use many different techniques in your marketing. So I'm going to go ahead and share my desktop here to show you some of the resources that we provided and walk you through those documents. So in our marketing outline, the first thing that you are going to be putting together for your business is the mission statement. Now this is the heart of your business. Just a couple of sentences. What do you do and for whom? So we've got an example here for the Shady Brook Bed and Breakfast, which I can barely pronounce when I read this example. And I'm going to give you a little clue. You want to be able to read your mission more or less in one breath. If you are, if you're not a smoker, if you've got good breathing, try to carry that sets your breadth of what you can do. That sets your length. This is not an elevator speech. This is 1 or 2 sentences. So I'm going to give this a try here. I don't know how my breathing is today, but the Shady Brook Bed and Breakfast offers a restful home away from home where the traveler can find comfortable colonial-style rooms, delicious home-cooked breakfasts, and friendly sightseeing advice. The Shady Brook aims to meet the traveler's needs for comfort, relaxation, and convenience. So I can do that in a couple of breaths here. So I'm going to put you on the spot, toggling back to our workshop here so that I can unmute you for a moment. And is anybody willing to share your mission statement?
The conference has been unmuted.
And I'm even giving you a little grammatical structure here. What's your business name? You might say where you're located or when you started. And what do you do for whom? Can somebody give me a mission example?
I don't know whether you guys can hear me or not. Can you hear through the cell phone?
Yep, I can hear. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. This is Linda McCracken from Sex and Safari.
Hi, Linda. And what's your mission?
Can you hear me? I'm so sorry.
No, we can hear you, Linda. Go ahead.
Okay, great. I'm in Saco, Maine. And my business is all about making women look and feel sexy. That's what I'm doing. It's a fashion stylist business.
Excellent. And so that's a great example. I'm going to mute here so we don't get the background
sorry about
audio.
that.
Thank you,
Conference has been muted.
That's a great example of a mission statement, making women look and feel sexy, right? It's short, it's sweet, it packs a punch, it hooks you in. And that's what you're looking for in the mission statement. You're not looking for a whole page. You're not looking to rattle on for 5 minutes while you lose your audience. This is the hook for folks. So coming back to our document here, work on your mission statement. Get that couple of sentences that's going to lead off all of your marketing. Everything that does not fit in the mission statement, You want to go on for a page about all your products and services, the different things that you're selling, the different lines that you're doing. Maybe you have services and products. This is where you can put the bulk of your information. And I think of this part, if you're thinking about designing a website for your business, or you have a website for your business, what would the different pages be? How would you separate out your products and services for different categories? Are there 2 or 3 umbrellas that things fall under in terms of different lines of what you're doing? Get that language on the paper. Get that strong marketing language that speaks directly to your customer about what is in it for your customer. Why do they need or want your product? That's what you're getting down for each of those lines or for each of the specific products or services that you offer. And the more that you get down today about your ideas, the more you're going to have in hand when you roll out your marketing and you need to populate your website with text, or you need to think about your Facebook marketing campaign. So the product and service description is really where you can take some time to go into detail about what you're selling. So your customer, this is your target market. Okay? And the first thing I want to tell you about your customers is the whole world is not your customer. If you are opening a restaurant and you tell me, oh, everybody within 30 miles is going to be my customer because everybody eats, I'm not going to believe you because not everybody eats out, number one. Not everybody eats out at the same type of place, number 2. Not everybody eats out every single week or every single month or the same every season. You need to tell me about the nature of your market. Second thing I want to point out, other than the don't tell me everybody eats, is the 80-20 rule. Okay? 80% of your profits are going to come from 20% of your customers. So your goal here is to figure out and communicate in your business plan who the 20% are. Who's the golden cash cow of business customer for your product and your sector? So I want you to pull out a piece of paper. I know at least one of you was on a cell phone, so if you're not in a place where you can write, you're exempt. But if you got a desk or something in front of you, pull out a blank piece of paper because we're going to do a short guided meditation here about your customer. Okay, so pen and paper in hand. Think about the first customer of your day. This could be somebody calling you on the phone if you're working out of your home. Could be somebody walking into your retail store. Could be the first email sale or online sale that comes through the wire from your online shop. But imagine that person behind that purchase. How old is that person? What do you think their age range is? What gender is that person? Where does that person live? Are they local? Are they within a certain region? Are they across the country from you or across the world from you? And where did that person hear about your product? What do they like to read, or where do they get their information? Are they online geeks or newspaper readers? Do they read their mail or do they throw it out? Do they own their own home or do they rent? How many people are in their home? And who actually made the decision to buy? And I raise that question because sometimes people are shopping for others, or certainly if you have a product marketed towards children, you have kind of a double market going in terms of marketing to the children, but marketing to the parents who are purchasing the product or other people purchasing the product. So these are just some questions to get you thinking about who that target customer is. And one of the other resource documents I've provided gives you a little bit more detail in terms of the numbers behind that target market. You can use the Census Fact Finder. It's not very good highlighting on my part there. The Census Fact Finder at this link to look up your own town, to look up your region, to look up multiple towns. And that, for instance, a homeowner question. Maybe I'm doing interior design, and I've identified that folks in a certain income range or people with 2 employed adults in the household who own homes are my target demographic. Well, I can go to the census and I can find out exactly how many people there are in my local region that fit that category. That's my numerical target market, just like we looked at in the example last week for my little horseback riding business idea. We looked at particular age range around caribou, right? You can do the same thing with any of your demographic categories. And there are other ways to get demographic information outside of the census. Trade magazines are wonderful if you have specific industry publications or membership organizations for your business. If you are looking at going to trade shows or craft fairs, festivals, things like that, get statistics about how many people come through there. Talk to other vendors about how many sales do they make, what's their average sale. That's going to help you target what products are going to move at that event. Tourism information is a really great source of information. When I teach our new ventures class down in the Holton area, it's always hilarious because we get to this point in the class and the visitor center is, I don't know, about 2 miles from where we teach the class. And so over lunch, inevitably, about half the class goes over to the visitor center, talks to the nice ladies who track all the visitors who come in, and they come back with statistics from the last year and a half of how many people came through the tourist center in Holton. Bingo, there's part of their business plan. So you can get that from your local visitor center, from your Chamber of Commerce, sometimes even from your local town as well. Here in Aroostook, and certainly for down east area as well, Canada is a part of our market, so it's important to look at those population statistics. If you're in southern Maine or other New England areas, you may have other New England cities or other states that you're looking at as adjacent as well. Sometimes your business will really speak to target specific populations. So if you're marketing something for kids, schools, community groups, civic groups, things like that might be relevant. If you are, let's see, a photographer, wedding licenses in your area might be a relevant statistic. If you're doing pet care, how many dog licenses are in the area? If you're a Maine guide, how many hunting licenses are issued in your region? Or maybe outside of your region, right? If you're looking at folks from southern Maine coming to Aroostook or vice versa. So think about your target market here. And I would say especially for those of you that are applying for loans or outside funding for your business, you have to quantify your market in terms of how many people are in the target market overall and what percentage of those folks you think you're going to capture. So my restaurant point, right? If I'm opening a restaurant, I'm not going to put in my business plan there are 10,000 people in Caribou, Maine, and all of them will come to my business at some point during the year, and that's what my cash flow is based on. No, I might take 1 to 2% of the market. This might be a very small percentage. If I'm trying to think of a business where you'd have a really high percentage. If you're a hair salon and there are 50 other hair salons in your local area, you're going to have a smaller market share than if you are the only game in town for 20 miles. So keep those competitors in the mix, keep your customer demographics in the mix, and set some realistic goals. And this is where this ties back to the informational interview we talked about last week. If you're talking to your competitors and you're comparing those statistics, you'll get a sense of what's actually happening on the ground. So from that point, the competition piece. You got a great start in terms of looking at that informational interview. And what I think about in competition when I'm writing the business plan is 1, 2, 3, me. So tell me about at least 3 competitors in detail and all the points of comparison. What's their pricing? Do they have a retail shop? Do they have an online presence? How well do they market? What's their niche? Does this one carry this line and somebody else carries this line? If you're a crafter, who's at what festivals? Do they take credit cards? Do they not take credit cards? Do they take mobile payments? All these points of contact or of comparison, like what we looked at in the informational interview, tell me about at least 3 competitors. So sometimes people will say, I have no competitors. For instance, one of our local business people here wrote a wonderful 50-page business plan in great detail about a new project. And under the competitors section, he wrote, we have no competitors. This has never been done before. It's true, but it's not useful. So if you feel like you have no competitors, you're probably telling me that you don't have any direct competitors, okay? Businesses that offer the same product or services you do in the same regional market. But I bet you have indirect competition. If you're selling a product, anything accessible through the Internet, anything sellable anywhere could be your competition. If you're making beautiful felt hats and hand-knit items, guess what? Walmart's $10 hat or $5 gloves are indirect competition. So at least show me enough that you really know where you stand in your competitive arena, even if somebody's not doing the exact same thing as you. And that's why I think of that 1, 2, 3 me. You've got to tell me in depth about at least 3 people, and then where do you fit in relative to that? What's going to make you stand out? Okay? So your distribution piece, and I'd like you to just jot in addition to this, your production is also something important to talk about here. By production I mean square footage, what vendors you're going to use, materials, your process, your equipment. This could be very detailed for some businesses. It could be very simple for other businesses. Depends on what sector you're in. Your distribution, here we're talking about 3 different types. You might have direct distribution, and that's like selling direct to your customer. That's your retail shop. That would be all of you who are at craft fairs or festivals or farmers markets, direct sales calls, that kind of thing. You have indirect distribution when you're selling by consignment or you're selling by wholesale. When you're selling at trade shows, and by that I mean things like the New England Products Trade Show, big trade shows where buyers are searching for products for them to pitch. Here in Aroostook County, the Presque Isle Forum has what they call a trade show. It's not a trade show with buyers. It's a thing for the community to go to, and it's like a craft fair, but they call it a trade show. So just being clear about what we mean. The indirect piece, I mean where buyers are looking at different products, not direct customers. And then you might have something that's a mix of those direct and indirect, like a catalog or mail order, internet sales, web sales. And I wanted to bounce over to Gigi here to talk a little bit about that online purchasing, because that's a huge area for businesses now, and it's a growing area for a lot of us. Gigi, you want to chime in? Oops, I think I lost Gigi. Hang on a sec. I'm going back to our side, and I bet I muted Gigi when I muted everybody. Sorry, Gigi. Okay. Gigi is hereby unmuted.
Okay, I'm here. So back to the economy, and when we really hit that crash, what I noticed most is the folks who were standing were the ones who really turned to online sales and giving their customers the capability of not only knowing about them and finding them online, but if they could engage in even having a shopping cart, or they were selling their products on Etsy. But there was some sort of online capability, because people who were having to choose whether or not to put gas in their car to drive somewhere, or whether they could be at the convenience of their own living room and their own computer, they were going to pick the computer every time. Remember, if you've got a product to sell, your number 1 competitor is Amazon.com. You are really needing to study Amazon.com, because they are anything you need. If it's a trowel, you can find it there. So you have to remember that the convenience factor. We're creatures of convenience. Consumers love convenience. If you can put it online and grab a credit card and put it into a shopping cart, that's really important, and that's how a lot of folks were staying alive in a down economy.
Excellent. So even if you're feeling like you're just starting with selling, with figuring out where your business is, make sure that your plan includes the online world. And we're going to look at that here. The resource that I sent along, the online marketing helpful links, I'm going to bump out to that here for a moment. And this is really why I asked the poll as we got into the marketing piece to gauge how many people were using this. So I saw people kind of hesitating in our poll around what the heck were directory listings. Now when you Google something and you see the little map come up with a little pin and a little description of the business, it's all nicely formatted there, what's driving that is this Google Places. You can go fill out your business information there for free. We did a technology training here in Aroostook a couple of years ago where we promoted this, and literally people's cell phones started ringing off the hook because they call you to validate that you are who you are when you put up the listing. So it's very easy. It's very quick. You can update it. You can keep it going, and it is free. So that would be the first thing that I would suggest to folks in terms of an online presence, simply because people use search engines more than we use the yellow pages these days. So you've got to be out there somewhere, even if it's just pointing to your physical location and your phone number. Some folks will ask if you don't want your physical location shared on there, you don't have to put a street address. You can just put a town and the phone number. We have a local veterinarian who had that question. She operates out of her home with a mobile vet service. She doesn't want to receive customers at her home, but the Google listing has her phone number and all the information about the business for people to be able to contact. Yahoo and Bing and other search engines also have this kind of thing. Why do you think I have Google on top? It's not because I love Google. It's not because I'm paid by Google or anything like that. They have a huge market share. Something over 80% of searches are on Google, and it's sort of the big brother of the process, in that if you're listed through Google, if you have a Google Places listing, and when we get to social media, a Google Plus listing, you're going to come up better in the search engine than just your other listing that's not Google architecture behind the scenes. So that's what directory listings are, that business information or sort of yellow page function. Many sectors, certainly travel and hotels, have a huge number of search engines and directories specific to that sector. So if that applies to your sector, do some research, be aware of that, and see where makes the most sense for you to list yourself, either for free or for paid, depending on the type of directory. You also have local and state directories. Gigi mentioned joining the Chamber of Commerce and how that drove traffic to her site. Maine Tourism Association and Maine Office of Tourism are also two resources for us here. And again, you might have sector-specific things that make sense for you there. Couple of resources on websites. I saw websites I think was the highest in our poll there in terms of how folks plan to market their business. You want to have your own domain. Okay? Even if you're going to make a free website, you want to make sure that your domain is what customers see and what you put on your marketing, not sites.google.com / whatever my business name is. Okay? Pretty cheap to get a domain name. This is just, GoDaddy is just one option. There are tons of domain name places to purchase, but make sure that your domain is available. Go get it and use it. If you set up a free website yourself, and these are a lot like using Microsoft Word. If you're comfortable in Word documents, you're probably going to be comfortable with the dashboards here on Google or WordPress or similar sites. It will default with their free architecture. It will default to that sites.google.com / whatever your name is. When you have your own domain, you can actually point it to the website so that people are typing in the domain, but they're going straight to that site. So it's a way of making it look nice on the front end. So whether you are going to do your site yourself or you're going to go find somebody that knows how to do it, I suggest that you educate yourself a bit. This is a great resource here, the Beginner's A to Z Guide on how to start a website. And it will arm you with just enough to be dangerous if you're shopping for a web designer, just enough to be dangerous and ask the right questions. Similarly, we have SEO. search engine optimization. You could build a site and nobody could ever find it. You need to know how to optimize your language, to optimize your keywords, to put together your site in a way that people are actually going to find it. Again, this is something that web designers can do for you. If you're going to rely on online shopping, you very well might want to work with a professional to help you maximize the site. You want to have a sense of what you're talking about before you go shopping for somebody to help you. And I say that especially in our region, we have a lot of folks that are great at design and not great at this. So you might have a beautiful website and your designer doesn't know how to get people to it, and you don't know how to get people to it. So arm yourself with enough to be dangerous there. If you're doing it yourself and you're reading into these resources, Google has what they call an AdWords keyword planner. And you can check the language that you're using and run it through this tool to see how many searches are looking for that particular term. And I'll give an example from Women Work in Community here. We have micro-enterprise coordinators, right? It's our micro-enterprise program behind this Basics of Starting a Business class. Well, how many people are searching for micro-enterprise when they want to start a business in Maine? Not a lot. I ran our language through this. Business planning, write a business plan, how to write a business plan, this kind of language is what people are looking for online. So when we've marketed our programs, right, my title might be Micro Enterprise Coordinator, but when you see our website it says Start a Business. That's important to use that language that customers are searching for. So I've included also in your links all of the social media links. Again, I don't have Facebook first because I like it more than anything else. I have Facebook first because they are an overwhelming market share. Many more people are on Facebook than Twitter or Pinterest or Google+. So if you start one place with social media, for most folks I'd say start with Facebook. Different industries, if your industry is hopping on Twitter, journalism, politics, entertainment, things like that, then go where your industry is. If you're a crafter and Pinterest is all where it's at, use that. Now one little word here about our friend Google, or our big brother Google. It's way down here. Google Plus has a tiny market share. They created it, I think, to really try to rival Facebook. It's not important so much in terms of using it as a social media platform. It's important in what we talked about, getting yourself on all of Google's various tools. If you have a little Google Plus presence, if you just set up your business shell there, it's going to bump you in their search engine because it's their own product. So even if it's just linking people to other places like your website or your other tools, use it. LinkedIn is more for professionals in terms of workforce development, career search, etc. But certainly if you're a consultant in certain sectors, architect, lawyer, sole proprietor, sole practitioner in a number of different sectors, you might use that in terms of networking with folks. Gigi mentioned the Google Analytics earlier, and that's a great tool to be able to embed their tools in your website and see where your traffic is coming from. That's how Gigi saw the Chamber of Commerce investment is worth my while because I'm getting traffic from that. Facebook has their own tool to show you from your business page how people are moving through the page, how, whether your campaigns are working, what the reach is for your different posts. And then very cool little product on ClickTail. This actually shows you how people are moving through your website. So how long they're staying on particular pages, where their mouse is going as they're reading a page. It literally shows you that trail of the customer action on the page. And that can help you say, hey, here's this great landing page for my product, but it's not actually grabbing people. What do I need to do to change that? A couple of other online or techie kind of resources. We already had somebody on the call say, hey, I'm on the mobile device. Can you hear me? You need to make sure your website is actually visible and usable from mobile devices. This is where a lot of folks' Internet use is going and already is. So these are a couple of resources in terms of how to make sure that your site is optimized for that. If you're using some of the the free or the website platforms, more and more of those now have mobile optimization kind of wired into them. QR codes, this little funky thing here. Looks like a barcode is actually a code that when people scan it with their smartphone, it takes them directly to the website that you have set the QR code for. There are many options to generate QR codes. This is one that you can do for free. Email marketing. Even if you're just at a craft fair or festival, gather customer information. Ask people to be on your mailing list. Ask people if they want to hear about future fairs, festivals, sales, etc. You can then market either directly through your email, or as you get a larger list, anything over about 500, you're going to need to use an email service, Constant Contact or MailChimp being a couple of the options. Gigi had mentioned our online and mobile payments. Could be a shopping cart on your site. Could be as simple as a PayPal connection to your site. Square, if you have a smartphone, you can plug Square or Intuit has a similar product right into your smartphone or your iPad or your iPod to be able to go out and make payments on a mobile basis. So a lot of craft fairs and festivals, folks that are out selling their product at various locations are using that. I know we have some folks on the line who are using Etsy. That's online shops for crafts and vintage, handmade kind of items. And eBay certainly has online shops that might be appropriate for some of your products. Gigi mentioned the Amazon rival there too in terms of how to get your products out in the world. Online print services. And we're going to come back to this a little bit when we talk about branding in a moment. There's a lot of cheap online printing available, whether it's for business cards, for logo wear, mugs, etc. Be careful that you are branding yourself and your business. Your free business cards on Vistaprint are going to be their designs, and they're going to include marketing for Vistaprint on the back of it. It's not the same as having your own brand. And then finally, coming back to our market research, some links that can help you. The Census link that we mentioned, identifying your North American Industry Classification System code, which will help you search for market research, for industry statistics, for all of that target market piece that we talked about. So I know this is a huge amount of resources and links here, and this is really something that you can follow through on your own time there. I want to show you one last resource, the 12-month marketing plan. This I kind of put together for myself, and I'll make it big for you here. Not quite that big. Hang on. Okay. So this is my effort outside of the online marketing to think about what is every type of marketing that you could possibly need or want for your business, from developing that logo and brand to the print materials, to any kind of advertising, free or paid, to direct sales calls, to social media, to consultants you're going to need. This is meant to get you thinking about what am I going to do and when am I going to do it. And you're going to need these quotes to be able to fold into the financials that we start working on next week. So this is a great time to think about what might I want to do for marketing, how much is it going to cost, when would I do it, and what would I expect out of it. And this is meant to get you thinking. You may not do all of these things for your business, but getting those quotes and getting things in place will help you target what you need. So lastly, on our marketing outline, we've got image, packaging, and promotion and advertising. And I'm going to toggle back to our slides as we go. So your image and packaging, what do I mean by branding? Now when I first started teaching business classes, I went home after one of the classes and I said to my wife, Kate, oh yeah, branding, not like cows, but like products. And she looked at me and she said, no, it is like cows, Erica. That's how the farmer tells that the cows are his. So this was a golden moment for me where obviously I did not understand farming even though I did understand business. Branding is the way you separate out your cow from the herd, right? Your cow gets lost. It's mixed in with thousands of other cows. It has a specific logo or brand that you can pull it back out. And this is really important in your business. They say that it takes at least 7 times for us to identify a brand. So we got to see the Nike swoosh for 7 times before we know it means sneakers. Same thing with your business. All of your products and your promotions have to look the same for people to identify it together. So I want to show you a couple of examples here from websites I'm going to share again. Hang on. Okay. Several of our graduates here. Luhu wool dryer balls. This is a logo, right? Her dryer balls are in the logo. The font mirrors that. The colors are part of her logo. When we look at the rest of her website, those colors mirror what's in her products. They mirror the website design. Her website links right over to her Facebook page. Okay, what do you see here? Same look, right? Same logo, same color. You don't have control over the font on Facebook in terms of what you type, but we see her picture and her fonts here. In her promotions here, we've got a Facebook promotion here which probably is mirrored in her print promotions in terms of that design, in terms of the logo and the integrity of that brand. A couple other examples. Morris & Essex, right? We see a very different kind of font up here, a kind of cool hand-drawn font. Their website, it looks like it's populated through the Etsy shop in part, so I bet if we hopped over to Etsy we'd see a very similar look. Her design itself in this case, the style is really part of her brand integrity. And when we go to the same Facebook page, you see the same look, the same style. We don't see a logo per se here in the same way we did with Luhu, but we do see the same kind of image and promotion. I'm scrolling down on Facebook here just to show you it's a visual medium. You got to bring that camera or bring that phone along and snap pictures of your business in action to really make yourself rise to the top in social media. You need that visual piece and the interaction with people. A third example would be our Clean Bee Laundry out in the Mid-Coast area. Great little logo. The colors you can see are carried through on their website here. And if we look at their Facebook page, not exactly the same in terms of color, but the same in terms of logo, right? The little bee with the little crown. And so you want to make sure that your logo you have in a color version and a black and white version that you can use in various ways. So those are just 3 examples of brands in action. And you want to make sure that your marketing, it has integrity in terms of how it's connected in that way, that everything looks like it belongs to the same business. And Gigi is letting me know that my QR code example goes to a Wikipedia page on Mitt Romney. I'm very sorry, folks. I didn't check my example. I just grabbed a Bing image. So see what can happen if you're not careful with your marketing. Excellent. So I'm going to just give a pause here. Does anybody have any questions on the marketing pieces that we've sped through here before we move on to pricing? And you can chat them or go ahead and raise your hand and I can unmute people individually if you have any questions at this point, other than the Mitt Romney Wikipedia page critique. Okay. So here's the warning. We're moving on to a little bit of math before the end of the call here. Pricing is the last piece we're going to cover today. And it is the most important piece or one of the most important pieces. And it's also sometimes the hardest piece. Some of you who are service businesses, it might be pretty simple. You look at where your competitors are, you place yourself, you make sure you're going to make money off of it, and off you go. Some of you with retail shops or many different products, you're going to have some pricing heavy lifting to do. So let's work our way through this. And I should say as well, your handout on the resources, the pricing worksheets, are going to be your homework to take away what we look at today and fill in for yourself as you do the research and you put the pieces together. So pricing is made up of several different variables here. The first of which is your variable costs. You might also call these direct costs. If you're looking at the tax form for your business, it will be called COGS, the cost of doing goods sold. So by this we mean raw materials. What's going into your product? Are you making things out of wood? The wood is the raw material. Are you making crafts? The actual material that goes into that product is what we're talking about here. Labor you include here only if it's directly related to the product. Okay? This is not your labor for most of us because your labor comes back out, as we'll see next week, in your owner's draw, in the time and the profit that you put in. We're talking about production employees, so maybe I make felted hats and mittens, and I'm gearing up for trade shows, and I need more than I can physically make. So I'm paying people by piecework. I'm going to include that piecework cost in my variable costs here. If I have subcontractors, like here's an example, one of the graphic designers that I've worked with, she does the design, she subcontracts out to printing for print services. That's a direct cost for her. These costs are things that if you weren't actually selling and making the product, you wouldn't incur them. If the graphic designer doesn't have a job that requires printing, she's not incurring that cost for printing. It's per customer. Similarly, sales commissions, if you have somebody actually representing your product, delivery charges to get it, that could be shipping, that could be you driving things around to get it to your customer, or if you're a service business, maybe you're doing housekeeping, you getting to the business is a variable cost. You don't have that cost if you don't have a customer that you're going to. Your physical packaging, right? The boxes or the shipping materials, the labels, the things that go on your product, and again are costs per product. Those are all part of your variable costs. And then fuel, if it's directly for production, for distribution or delivery. We're not talking here about heating your shop. That's something that you have to pay whether or not you have any sales. The fuel here for the variable cost is related directly to how many things you're making and selling. Okay? So that's your first piece, and we're going to look at some specific examples of this. So if you're feeling lost thinking about the math, you won't be in a moment. Your fixed costs are everything else. This is your overhead. You might hear it being called indirect or operating costs. And they're the costs of being in business. They're the things that you still have to pay even if you don't have any sales and you don't have any customers, like rent for your retail shop, like your marketing and advertising, because you might pay $200 for marketing and you might get one customer, or you might pay $200 for marketing and you might get 50 customers. It's still the same marketing cost. It's not a per customer cost. Any kind of office or cleaning supplies, utilities, fuel for heat, not that for production or distribution. Tools and equipment, repairs and maintenance, licenses and permits. And please take your pen out here or make yourself a note. In addition to licenses and permits, big one here, insurance, which we talked about a little bit last week, but you want to make sure to price out insurance as part of your overhead costs for most of us in business. Dues and publications, and here's where you would put, if you're a retail store that has front desk staff, that you're paying hourly, or you've got salaried staff that are operational, here's where you put that kind of labor that's not piecework or not directly per product. Next, you've got to select your price. Okay? And there's three parts of the three-legged stool that we look at in figuring out your price. What's your competition charging? That's going to really limit what you're able to do. If you're a discount kind of product and you're relying on mass sales, right, that's going to be a different price point than if you're a custom furniture maker with one of a kind things that you produce 10 of a year. Right? Your price is going to be very different. Your competition in that market niche set the ceiling for your price. Now your break even is the floor of the price, right? If you're not making money off of your garden, you're a garden. If you're growing things for profit, you're a farm. If you're not making money on your business, your prices are going to have to be set at least to cover those costs. And your profit goals are going to determine whether that comes together. Now this looks a lot like the feasibility, viability, and desirability from last week, right? This is the process of what we're figuring out for your business. So let's look at a couple of examples here. If you're a product business, your floor might be your discount competitors. It might be just the break-even point. Your mid-range might be where most of your competitors are, or your average direct competitor. And the ceiling might be that custom work or the high-end or exclusive things. So for instance, if I'm making jewelry and I'm doing custom work for wedding favors, I'm not going to compare my prices to what somebody can purchase online from Oriental Trading Company, right? It depends on where you stand in your market. So for a product business, here's where we get the math. So I hope everybody's hanging onto your seats here. If you're charging $10 for your product, okay, we got to figure out what your unit contribution coming out of that is. What are you profiting per piece? So if your raw materials cost $3, and maybe I'm paying somebody to do piecework and help me produce it, and maybe I also have a sales commission on that product when people are marketing it out in the world, and I got to ship it to the customer. Okay? So for every product that I sell at $10, my cost behind that is $5.50. So I'm only going to make $4.50 to go towards the operating costs, towards my profit out of the business. Okay? So in this case, let's take a look. If I sell my product wholesale, right? I said $10 for my product up front if I'm just selling it direct to customers. If I sell it wholesale, how much am I likely to get from a retailer here? I know I'm making you do math. You can hazard a wild guess even if you're not sure here. Come on. Am I going to get the full $10? Am I going to get some percentage of that? Okay, I have a lot of people either very familiar with wholesale or able to do math at this point in the training. This is good. So we have some folks that are saying 5 and some that are saying $5.50. So typically, I'm toggling back here, typically I'm only going to get $5, so usually about 50%. So why point that out in this case? Because my cost for product is $5.50. So if I sell at this price wholesale, I'm not even going to cover my costs. So you've got to factor that in when you're thinking about your pricing. Even if you're just doing craft fairs and festivals now, or you're selling direct to customers now, that's going to be different if you start getting into a wholesale and retail situation. Okay, so looking at the break even with this math example, right? We have our $4.50 profit per item, and now I'm figuring if I'm just selling them directly. And if my overhead costs are $13.50 a month, I'm really asking you to do math here. How many units do I have to sell each month to cover my operating costs? Again, if you don't have a calculator or you can't do math in your head, you can hazard a wild guess here. What do you think? $4.50 per item in profit, $1,350 a month for my overhead. What do I have to sell to break even here? Haha, at least one person is fast with the calculator or with the head. Okay, okay. We have some good estimators here too. Okay, so we're in the 300 to 450 range here in our poll. And if you had your calculator handy, you could figure out, yes, that's $300 per month that you need to sell just to break even, right? I'm not making any profit out of this sucker yet. So if I'm a service business, it's a little bit of a different picture because I might have very little overhead if I'm providing a service out of my home. So how I think of that bell curve or the projection here, at the first stage, if I price really low, that's really a hobby or a break-even point. An example in my region, I had a long-arm quilter that was going into business for herself, and one of her competitors was charging $45 to do the entire finish work on a queen-size quilt. And when she priced it out, there was no way this competitor was making any money. So in that case, we can kind of assume, hey, that competitor is more at a hobby or a break-even stage. This is not pricing that is sustainable. Then in the middle, you might compare, okay, well, what's a comparable hourly wage? You know, am I making out of my business at least what I'd make going to work for minimum wage at Walmart. Or on the other end, looking at what you developed last week from your personal budget and your goals for your business, are you making enough to make that transition from full-time employment or to supplement your income in what you'd like to get from the business? And then we have, what are you really worth? What's the market going to bear? Okay, what price point for your service business would keep you with customers without a huge waiting list? And I'll give that example of the long-armed quilter. She set her pricing. She had very low overhead. She's very affordable prices, not the $45 per queen size quilt, but still very affordable in our local region. And she has a waiting list of 45 or 50 people. Right? She could easily raise her prices and make a greater profit. So sometimes your customers will tell you what you can get away with charging. The other thing that I want to point out for the what I'm really worth is if you're thinking about a business that you are going to be transitioning from other employment with benefits to that business, you've got to think about what are those personal costs like health care, retirement, overhead, time, etc., that really make it worth your while. And then see what that price point is going to be for the size of your market, for what you could charge relative to your competitors. How can you price for really what you're worth? So a service example here, and this is based on a massage business. If you're charging $75 for an hour, you might have $5 per person, and your unit contribution might be most of that charge, right? $70 in this case. Very different scene than the product example we looked at, where they were only making $4.50 out of every $10 sold. So the service business, maybe this person is only needs about $350 a month. Might be a little shared space rental, might be your insurance, your marketing, etc. So what does she need? $350 a month divided by the 70 per hour client. She only needs 5 billable hours to cover her costs in this case, a kind of lower barrier for the service business than the product business. But what about her profit? Okay, if she wants to make $2,500 a month and she's making $70 of profit for each hour, she's going to need 36 billable hours to generate the profit. Still needs the 5 billable hours to cover her overhead, right? Adds up to 41 billable hours a month or 9.5 hours a week. Now this doesn't include her marketing, her operations, or any non-client time, but we're talking about just under 10 hours a week of billable time. So I'm curious, we looked at the Equus Farm thing last week. Like, does this sound worthwhile? You want to go be a massage therapist? What do you think? What does our service business look like? So you see a lot of folks looking good supplemental income primarily. This might not fill the need for full-time employment. It might not earn enough to be able to cover those health insurance, retirement, etc. But sure, it would work. Pretty low overhead, pretty high return. So those are just 2 examples of how to do the pricing for a product business and for a service business. I'd refer you back to the business plan samples that we looked at in the first week that were included as part of the follow-up resources, and you'll see that those break-evens for those examples if you're trying to tease it out for yourself. Again, and I'll just show you the resource that we provided around pricing for you to use on the homework end. Your pricing worksheet is going to go through all of those pieces we just talked about. Okay? Variable costs, competitors' costs, pricing, that unit contribution and how to figure it, your operating costs, where you break even, what you want for profit, which you may already have that done from the goals for your business last week, and how many do you have to sell or how many customers do you have to reach that. So you've got several worksheets here to help you walk through everything that we just did with the examples, and you can use that for your business. So pricing is probably your biggest piece coming out. Our homework for this week is really to continue working on the business plan and those marketing outline pieces that we covered today. Market research, identifying who you're selling to and how many of them are out there. And again, that's using the worksheet that I provided as a resource. Get your quotes. Nail down some of those details. Start to get the balls in the air in terms of calling about advertising or checking out web design quotes, things like that, so that you have a sense of how much you need to get started with your advertising. And that will help you next week when we get to the financials. And then the pricing, which again is sort of a balancing act. You're coming at it from all of those directions. Your competitor research will help you, figuring out your vendors and your cost for materials. All of that's going to piece together, hopefully, to find you a balanced price. And then this is the most important part of the homework. Your head is probably spinning right now in terms of what we've gone through with pricing. Take a deep breath. Let it sit. Let the pieces come together. This may be a long process. You might just be getting started with the webinar today, and you're going to start putting the pieces of the puzzle together as you move forward. It might be a very short process. If you're trying to write a business plan to bring to a lender within a week or two, start putting those pieces together now. So I'm going to go ahead and open us up for discussion or any questions that
The
folks might
conference has
have.
been unmuted.
Okay, so any questions? Your brain's spinning with marketing and pricing? One question as we go forward from me, what do you feel you need to take the next step in what we've talked about today? Because we've covered a lot. What's the first step you're going to take?
This is Linda speaking. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. And actually, I'm going to, Linda, I'm going to mute other folks and unmute you, so hold on just a sec.
No problem.
Okay, here, go ahead.
For me, because I think in concepts instead of numbers, for me the most important thing right now is working on my logo, and I have been, and I found somebody to do it. So for me, that's really spearheading my marketing plan, is to have that logo done.
Excellent.
That's about that. Yep.
Excellent. And starting from the top with your branding is a great idea. Sometimes it's hard to backtrack if you're working with a very disjointed brand and then trying to move towards a logo. You have a lot more to clean up than you do when you're starting fresh. Great.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the class. See you next week.
Excellent. And any other questions or comments? Great. Well, I'll go ahead and close out this week's class then. And then as always, you are welcome to get in touch with Gigi or me during the week. And I would urge you to take the follow-up survey. We'd love your feedback on how things are going, what you'd like to see, and what would help you as we finish up next week. So the post-meeting survey will pop up in a moment, or you can click on the follow-up link. Thanks so much, folks. We'll see you next Wednesday, and keep on with your plans. Thank you.